Again, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's return to the Farm to School program. I'd like to hear your analysis of the success of the program and any challenges that you're facing. Again, I think this is exciting at many levels, introducing local food, nutritious foods into the diets of young people, creating that linkage back to farmer to family, rural to urban. It has a lot of levels of social meeting beyond just the nutritional outcomes. So talk about the implementation of the program. I have the basic statistics, 3.2 million students served, but the possibilities for further expansion as well as any problems you're encountering. And let's do that for 1 minute, and I'm going to turn to a couple of other things.
Sure. Mr. Fortenberry, it's another wonderful thing I get to see out on the road is Farm to School program, and I've seen anecdotally when you talk to the kids participating in those programs, it's inspiring them not only to better health as they talk about new fruits and vegetables they've tried and those that they now continue to eat.
And it is amazing how the nutritionists in schools know how to place certain foods that create a, I guess, psychological preference. I've learned this too.
They do a wonderful job, and you can see it at really about any of those locations. But also it inspires in those kids, talking to kids who come from low-income families about aspirations to be botanists and careers in agriculture and different types of things. So the success across the front on Farm to School, and I think that it's having anecdotally a greater effect on schools, on children's healthy choices, being able to participate in that than any of the programs that we run. So we're very excited about that. The additional money that Congress has provided, the $5 million in the last 2 years has really helped expand that program. One request that we do have from the agency and the President's budget is that the limit of $100,000 be able to be moved up to $500,000. It will allow schools to operate programs have funds to operate those programs over a longer term as they get them established, but also as you look at some of your larger school districts to have projects that can serve districts.
Mr. Chairman, maybe we could make note of that. I think that's an important point that was just made. So as we work on the next bill, I think that's a good point. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Secondly, well, let me wrap this up by saying, again, there is a tendency in government to define our activities around the lanes in which they've traditionally been defined, which met a type of need sometime in the past. So it's easier to be confined to what is than to think about what could be. And again, this alignment of food, nutrition, and health is absolutely critical if we are going to take a holistic approach to the ecosystem of livability for persons, which fundamentally centers around health and nutrition, food, as well as the possibilities of, in constrained budget times, moving across sectors to improve outcomes while reducing cost. And third, resocializing concepts which used to be the norm. Again, the farmer connected to the family, the rural-urban integration, which we've lost. The next iteration of this, I'll talk to you about at some point, Mr. Chairman, is the idea of agricultural programs either revitalized or embedded in schools. Why in the world botany can't be about growing things at school that then get fed to kids? We're exploring this back home. That's mostly local issues, but there's a federal role here as well. There is I'm going to divert for a moment to a recent study that in the Annals of Internal Medicine that says that red meat consumption may very well be okay after all. Now, I come from cattle country, as you're quite aware, and this is important to us because when we're talking about the multitude of studies and information that comes at people, at some point in time, one thing's bad, then suddenly it's good. Now, are you familiar with this study, and will the new dietary guidelines look at animal protein consumption as an important part of that guideline versus heavy carbohydrates?
Yes, sir. Again, appreciate that question. As you all know, we're in the middle of the dietary guidelines process. The advisory committee is reviewing the evidence now. One of the problems that we have with Americans' health is that we hear these different headlines all the time. Today something's good, tomorrow it's bad. Americans don't know what to do with that. The dietary guidelines process should help clear that out for everyone, and that's what the process is designed to do. So they will consider issues such as these as they consider the dietary patterns of Americans and what the research shows on that front. And all of the evidence that was considered in that recent headline is available for consideration per the committee. They will set their own protocol for the systematic reviews that they will review, but they're not excluding any of that evidence.
The same thing could be said for whole milk or 2% milk, that the rates of obesity took off prior to when there were higher levels after there were higher levels of actual high levels of consumption of whole milk and 2% milk. This is another thing that I think that needs to be reexamined that has possibly gotten confused over the last few years.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.